If March Madness wasn't enough for you, well, it's continuing on into other collegiate sports. Postseason for NCAA Gymnastics is just beginning, and high expectations are there for Auburn Gymnastics. So let's talk about what to expect in the postseason schedule-wise, but how also you can stay tuned into the action. Welcome to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. Our content here may tend to be Auburn sports heavy, but if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. Thank you to members of our booster club like Felix Gonzalez, who help produce videos like this. I know Auburn basketball fans, it still stings. The basketball team is out of March Madness, but your gymnastics ladies are just beginning their version of March Madness in the NCAA Tournament. You need to be staying tuned to this action because they've been doing great all season, especially with the whole storyline of Suni Lee being part of the program. It's hard to miss Auburn Gymnastics this season, even if you're not an Auburn Tiger fan. So what I want to do in this video is give you a couple things, bits of information on how you can best stay tuned into the action. We're going to talk about the overall structure of the NCAA Gymnastics Tournament, the specific regional that Auburn finds himself in, which is of significant importance to Auburn Tigers fans. And then we're going to talk about how you can stay tuned in either at home or if you're planning on going to some of the action in the tournament. First, let's talk about the structure of the overall gymnastics tournament. There's going to be 4 regionals, and surprise, surprise, Auburn Gymnastics, at least the arena, Neville Arena, will be hosting a regional. Big opportunity for Tigers fans to see their own ladies, but obviously take in a little bit of NCAA gymnastics action. Now, each of these regionals, including Auburn, there's also going to be Norman, Oklahoma, Seattle, Washington, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Within each of those regionals, 7 teams have already been invited, with 2 other teams being invited into a, we'll call it a play-in meet that they have to compete for that 8th and final spot. The first day of each regional will take place with those 2 teams that are playing in for that 8th and final spot. Day 2 will have 2 sessions, an afternoon and an evening session, each with 4 teams competing in each of those sessions. The top 2 teams of those sessions will move on to that final day of competition in regional action, which will technically be their Sweet 16, as they call it. And there, they will compete, those 4 teams, for 2 spots to move on to the semifinals, which would be their version of the Elite 8. At this point, it'd be important to also note, before we move on to that part of the discussion of the tournament, there will be individuals competing at these specific regionals in only single or maybe in just a multiple events, not necessarily as a team from other schools that weren't necessarily invited. You'll see that trend continue throughout the tournament, even into semifinals and finals, where individuals will get invited to individual events to compete. I keep using the word individual national titles. Derrian Gobourne is an example for Auburn that happened in recent years. From there, the semifinals will take place in Fort Worth, Texas over the 14th of April through the 16th of April. So they'll have the Elite 8, they'll get down to 4 teams, their final 4, but they will all compete together in that final session of the NCAA Championship to determine who's the best team overall. And of course, as we already addressed, some individual champions as well. So that's the basic overall structure for NCAA competition in the postseason. Now let's talk about what most of you here on this channel are here for, the Auburn part of it. And we've already talked about it. The huge exciting thing is that Auburn will be hosting a regional, and they're the number 2 seed in their regional. The number 1 seed, Florida, has to come to our home court or home arena to compete against us. A little bit of home court advantage for us, don't you think? So now thinking back to the structure we just discussed about the overall tournament. Remember, there's going to be a day 1 with 2 people that got invited to compete for that 8th and final spot on day 1 in the Auburn Regional. That's going to be Iowa State and Western Michigan competing for that final spot. The winner of that will move on into the big field to be part of that group of 8, divided into 2 sessions on day 2. For Auburn's session, which is going to be that afternoon one starting at 1 p.m. Central Time, it's going to be very SEC heavy. You've got Auburn, you've got Kentucky, Georgia, and Southern Utah competing in that afternoon session. That second session will be in the evening at 7 p.m. Central Time with Florida, the winner of Western Michigan and Iowa State, Denver, and Ohio State. Florida is the only SEC team in that session. The winners, or the top 2 winners, I should say, of each of those sessions will move on to the Sweet 16, still in Auburn, competing for those final spots to move into the semifinals. It's important to note that they will have a rest day in between those first 2 days of competition in the regional. April Fool's Day is kind of ironic how that worked out, but April 2nd is that third session where we'll get down to 2 teams moving on to compete for those final spots in the overall championships in Fort Worth. That's what you can anticipate for the action in Auburn. Now, how can you be a part of it? How can you maybe watch it yourself at home or maybe even visit? Well, for TV stuff right now, the only thing that I could find that's confirmed is for the semifinals and the finals. The semifinals are going to be broadcast on ESPN2, and ABC is going to carry the championship part of it. So that's the 2 national channels that you can find that type of action on. There's nothing really announced so far as I can tell, for the regional action, especially in Auburn. But let's be honest, we have Suni Lee. They're going to broadcast something, at least some part of the session, to show Auburn and Suni Lee. And let's not kid ourselves. Suni's not the only star here that's worth seeing. You've got the entire team structure, especially Derrian Gobourne, Drew Watson, several Auburn Tigers that people want to see on the national stage. Now, if you want to go see it in person, and I highly recommend, if you're considering it, you need to jump on this as soon as you see this, because as of the moment, there are still tickets available, but I can't guarantee that because, after all, it is in Auburn and people want to come see Suni Lee. So if you want to go see it yourself, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can purchase individual tickets to each session, which means that you would need one for the day 1, for the day 2 session 1, day 2 session 2, and day 3 competition, all for $15 a piece, which runs you about $60 total. Now, if you're planning on going to all of them, there's an overall session ticket for $40 that you probably should just take advantage of, or you can just buy the individual $15 tickets for whichever sessions you want to go see, as long as they stay available. So that is how you can watch it in person in the Auburn Regional if you plan on going there. That's all the information that you really need for following along, not just with Auburn, but the rest of the NCAA field to determine who's going to be the gymnastics champion this year. How far do you think they'll go? How do you think they'll do as individuals, as a team? Let me know down there in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this content, please do help support it by smashing that like button. And if you haven't, please subscribe along with hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any of our uploads or live streams. There's also ways to get involved and help support our content here listed in the description. You can become a channel member by hitting the join button or heading over to patreon.com/E2C Network. Become a member of the E2C Network Booster Club. Thank you for tuning into the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks. War Eagle.